Have you noticed your phone is quieter than it used to be? The group chats you were once active in have gone silent, at least for you. The invitations that used to flood your calendar have slowed to a trickle. Friends you've known for years suddenly seem distant, like there's an invisible wall between you that neither of you knows how to cross. And you're standing there, looking at your shrinking social circle, wondering, did I do something wrong? Let me tell you something that Carl Jung discovered through decades of working with people who were individuating, who were becoming conscious, who were waking up. The shrinking of your social circle isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's finally right. It's one of the most predictable and least discussed consequences of spiritual awakening. Jung himself lived this reality. As he went deeper into his own psychological work, as he developed his theories about the unconscious and individuation, he found himself increasingly isolated from his peers. Even his closest colleague and mentor, Sigmund Freud, eventually couldn't tolerate Jung's expanding consciousness. Their friendship ended not because of personal betrayal, but because Jung's awakening threatened Freud's entire worldview. This is what happens when you wake up in a world that's largely asleep. Your frequency changes, and the people operating on the old frequency either can't hear you anymore, or the sound of your new frequency is so uncomfortable to them that they pull away. Not because anyone is bad or wrong, but because consciousness is inherently selective. It can't maintain the same connections that unconsciousness could. If you're going through this right now, if you're watching friendships dissolve, if you're feeling more isolated than ever, if you're questioning whether your awakening has made you impossible to love, you need to understand what's really happening. Because once you see it clearly, you'll stop feeling broken and start recognizing it for what it actually is. Evolution. Before we explore exactly why awakened people end up with fewer friends, if you're recognizing yourself in this description and want practical tools to navigate the loneliness of consciousness while finding your true tribe, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Let me explain what's really happening when your friendships start falling away. Your internal frequency has changed. Think of consciousness like a radio signal. For most of your life, you were broadcasting and receiving on one frequency. Let's call it the conventional frequency. The frequency where people talk about surface things, where connection happens through shared activities and mutual complaints, where friendship is based on proximity and habit more than depth. And you were perfectly content on that frequency. You had lots of friends, you went to parties, you had people to call when you were bored, you felt socially connected, because everyone around you was tuned to the same station, broadcasting and receiving the same signals. But then something happened. Your awakening began. Maybe it was a crisis that shook you. Maybe it was a loss that broke you open. Maybe it was just time, your soul finally insisting that you become who you truly are. Whatever the catalyst, your frequency started shifting. At first, you could still tune into the old frequency when you needed to. You could still have those surface conversations. You could still pretend to care about the same things everyone else cared about. But gradually, it became harder. The old frequency started coming through with static. What used to sound like music now sounded like noise. Jung called this the development of consciousness, and he was very clear about what it costs. He said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Part of that pain is the loss of connections that can't shift with you. Part of that pain is watching friendships dissolve, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because you're simply not on the same frequency anymore. Your friends haven't changed, They're still broadcasting on the same frequency they always were. But you're not receiving it clearly anymore, and they're not receiving yours either. What you're saying sounds foreign to them. What they're saying sounds hollow to you. And neither of you can figure out what happened to the easy connection you used to have. You've probably noticed it most acutely in conversations. You're sitting with friends you've known for years, and they're talking about the same things they always talk about. Who said what to whom? What someone bought? What happened on some television show? Complaints about work that never change. Gossip about people you barely know. And you're there, nodding along, making the appropriate responses. But inside, you're feeling something between boredom and suffocation. Not because you think you're better than these topics, not because you're judging your friends, but because you literally can't make yourself care anymore. It's like you've been eating rich, nourishing food, and someone's offering you cardboard. Your system has changed. What used to satisfy you doesn't anymore. What used to feel like connection now feels like going through the motions. What used to be enough now feels profoundly empty. You might try to redirect the conversation to something deeper. You ask a real question. You try to talk about something meaningful, and you watch their eyes glaze over. Or they humor you for a minute and then redirect back to the surface. Or they get uncomfortable and change the subject. Jung would say this is because they're still identified with their persona, the mask they show the world. They haven't done the work of going beneath that mask, of exploring the shadow, of becoming conscious. And when you try to invite them into depth, it threatens the entire structure they've built their identity on. So they resist, not consciously, not maliciously, but the ego in them resists any invitation to go deeper, because going deeper means questioning everything, and most people aren't ready for that. Most people are committed to maintaining their illusions, their comfortable patterns, their familiar ways of being, and you can't make yourself care about the surface anymore because you've seen what's beneath it. You've done the work of going inward. You've faced your shadow. You've questioned your assumptions. You've deconstructed your identity and rebuilt it consciously. And now, conversations that stay on the surface feel like a betrayal of everything you've discovered. It's not just conversations, it's activities too. The things you used to do with friends now feel meaningless. Going to bars and drinking until you're numb. Shopping for things you don't need. Binge-watching shows that don't challenge or nourish you. Attending social events where everyone's performing and nobody's present. Your friends invite you to these things, and you make excuses. You're tired, you're busy, you're not feeling well. And technically, you're telling the truth. You are tired, tired of pretending. You are busy, busy with inner work. You are not feeling well. The old activities make you feel worse, not better. Your friends start to notice you're pulling away. They might confront you about it. You never want to hang out anymore. What's wrong? Are you okay? And you don't know what to say, because how do you explain that you've outgrown the entire framework of how you used to relate? You can't say, I don't want to spend my limited time on Earth engaging in activities that distract me from the deep work I'm doing. That sounds preachy. You can't say, these activities feel empty to me now. That sounds judgmental. You can't say, I'm operating on a different frequency. That sounds insane. So you make more excuses. You become the friend who's always busy, the one who never shows up, the one who seems to be drifting away for mysterious reasons. And your friends either get hurt or get irritated or eventually stop inviting you, and your circle shrinks. Jung understood this dynamic deeply. He wrote about how individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires separation from the collective. Not necessarily physical separation, but psychological separation. You have to step out of the collective activities, the collective thinking, the collective values. And when you do, you stand alone, at least for a while, at least until you find other people who have also stepped out. But in the meantime, the old friendships based on collective activities can't survive. They weren't built to survive consciousness. They were built to sustain unconsciousness. And when you become conscious, they crumble. Here's another reason awakened people lose friends. They can't wear masks anymore. And most friendships are built on mutual agreement to wear certain masks, to play certain roles, to not look too closely at what's really happening. Before you awakened, you probably played different roles with different friends. With some friends, you were the funny one. With others, you were the wise one. With others, you were the mess who needed help. These roles gave you identity, gave you a place in the social structure, gave you a way to relate. But when you awaken, when you start doing the work of integrating your shadow and becoming whole, you can't play those limited roles anymore. You've discovered that you're all of it, funny and serious, wise and confused, put together and messy. You're too complex, too integrated, too real to fit into the neat little box that each friendship assigned you. And this makes people uncomfortable. They liked you in your box. They knew how to relate to you in your box. They had a role to play in response to your role. And now, you're not playing it anymore. You're not being who they need you to be. You're being who you actually are. And who you actually are doesn't fit into their framework. You're showing up differently. You're responding differently. You're not maintaining the unconscious agreements that held the friendship together. And they don't know how to relate to this new version of you. Some friends will explicitly ask you to go back to your old role. What happened to your sense of humor? Why are you being so serious? Can't you just relax and be normal? They're essentially asking you to put the mask back on, to shrink back into the comfortable size, to stop being so fully yourself. And you can't. Even if you wanted to, you can't. The mask doesn't fit anymore. The role feels like a lie. The pretending takes more energy than you have. You've tasted authenticity, and you can't go back to performance. So, the friendship ends. Not with a fight usually, just a gradual fading. You see each other less. You have less to say. The connection that used to be easy becomes strained. And eventually you're not really friends anymore. You're people who used to be friends, who have fond memories, but who don't actually relate anymore. Jung made another observation about why awakened people struggle to maintain friendships. They need depth that most people can't provide. Awakening expands your capacity for depth. You've explored the darkness within yourself. You've sat with your pain. You've faced your fears. You've questioned your deepest beliefs. This gives you access to depths within yourself you didn't know existed. And once you've accessed those depths, you need relationships that can meet you there. You need conversations that go beneath the surface. You need connections that touch the real stuff, meaning, purpose, truth, consciousness. But most people haven't done that work. Most people are still living on the surface, still avoiding their depths, still running from anything that requires them to go inward. And when you try to have a deep conversation with someone who lives on the surface, it doesn't work. You might try to talk about what you're going through, about the insights you're having, about the questions you're exploring, and they look at you like you're speaking another language. Or they try to offer advice that completely misses the point. Or they get uncomfortable and try to lighten things up with a joke. They can't meet you in the depths because they haven't been there themselves. They don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the willingness. And you can't have a friendship that only operates on the surface when you're living at depth. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. This is the loneliness of the awakened, not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being unable to share what matters most, of knowing things you can't talk about, of seeing things nobody else sees. You're surrounded by people, but you're lonely, because the conversations available to you don't touch what's actually alive in you. The friendships available to you don't meet you where you actually are. You're living at a depth that most people around you have never explored. And if you're experiencing this loneliness right now, if you're feeling the ache of not being met in your depths, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Here's something else Jung understood about why awakened people lose friends. You become a mirror, and most people don't like what they see when they look in mirrors. Your awakening, your consciousness, your authenticity. It reflects back to people their own lack of awakening, their own unconsciousness, their own inauthenticity. You're not trying to make them see this. You're not judging them. You're not pointing it out. But your very presence does it anyway. Your peace reflects their anxiety. Your authenticity reflects their masks. Your depth reflects their surface dwelling. Your freedom reflects their imprisonment. And this makes them uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Being around you reminds them of work they're not ready to do, of questions they're not ready to ask, of growth they're not ready to pursue. So they pull away, not consciously, not deliberately, but they find reasons to see you less, to invite you to fewer things, to gradually phase you out. Some will be more explicit about it. They'll say things like, "You've changed. You're not fun anymore. You think you're better than everyone." These are projections. What they really mean is, "You're not playing the game anymore, and that makes me uncomfortable. You're holding up a mirror I don't want to look into. You're reminding me of my own stagnation." But they can't say that. Most people don't have that level of self-awareness. So, they project their discomfort onto you. They make you the problem. They make your growth into your flaw. And they use that as justification to distance themselves from you. Jung knew this dynamic well. He called it the shadow projection. When people can't face something in themselves, they project it onto others. They see it out there instead of in here. And when you become conscious, when you've done your shadow work, you stop accepting these projections. You don't take them on. You don't make them mean something about you. But the people projecting don't know what to do with that. They're used to others absorbing their projections. And when you don't, when you remain clear about who you are despite their projections, it's even more unsettling to them. So they pull away further. And your circle shrinks more. So here's where you might be right now. You've lost most of your old friends. The people you used to spend time with don't call anymore. The group chats have gone quiet. The invitations have stopped coming. You're more alone than you've ever been. And you're wondering if this is just how it is now. If awakening means permanent isolation. Let me tell you what Jung understood about this phase. It's temporary. Not the consciousness, that's permanent. But the isolation, the loneliness, the feeling that you're the only one who sees what you see, that's temporary. Because here's what happens. As you continue to awaken, as you continue to embody your truth, as you continue to live authentically, you start attracting different people. People who are also awake. People who also speak your language. People who can meet you in the depths you've discovered. These people are rare, much rarer than the friends you lost. But they're real, and they're looking for you just as much as you're looking for them. They've also gone through the phase of losing their old friends. They've also experienced the loneliness of consciousness. They've also wondered if they'd ever find their tribe. And when you meet them, when you connect with even one person who truly gets it, who truly sees you, who truly speaks your language, it's worth all the loneliness you endured, because one conscious friendship is worth 1,000 unconscious ones. One authentic connection is worth a lifetime of surface relationships. Jung called these people fellow travelers on the path of individuation, and he said that finding them isn't about seeking them out deliberately. It's about becoming so fully yourself that you naturally magnetize them. They find you because your frequency calls to them, because your authenticity recognizes their authenticity. Here's what you need to understand about why spiritually awake people don't have many friends. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Your life is shifting from quantity to quality, from breadth to depth, from many shallow connections to few deep ones. Before awakening, you might have had dozens of friends. You were always busy, always social, always surrounded by people. But how many of those friendships actually nourished your soul? How many of those connections actually saw the real you? How many of those relationships could hold you in your depths? Now, you might have only a handful of friends, maybe just one or two. Maybe, for now, none. But the friendships you're moving toward, the ones that are coming as you continue to awaken, will be deeper than anything you've experienced before. These will be friendships where you can be fully yourself, where you don't have to explain or justify or defend your awakening, where you can talk about what actually matters to you without feeling like you're speaking a foreign language, where silence is comfortable because presence is the real communication. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." This is what conscious friendship looks like. Not people who maintain each other's illusions, but people who support each other's transformation. Not people who keep you comfortable, but people who meet you in growth. And you can't have that kind of friendship with many people. It's too intense. It requires too much presence. It demands too much authenticity. So, your circle has to shrink. The friendships that were based on shared unconsciousness have to fall away to make space for friendships based on shared consciousness. So, what do you actually do while you're in this lonely phase? While you're waiting for your real tribe to find you? While you're dealing with the grief of losing the old friends who can't meet you anymore? First, stop trying to force the old friendships to work. Stop trying to shrink yourself back into relationships that no longer fit. Stop trying to make yourself care about things you've outgrown. Honor the death of what's dying. Let it go with grace. Second, use the solitude. This alone time isn't punishment, it's preparation. You're developing a relationship with yourself that's deeper than any relationship you've had with another person. You're getting to know who you are when you're not performing for anyone else. You're building the foundation of self-knowing that will allow you to have truly conscious relationships when they come. Third, trust the process. Trust that your real tribe is finding you. Trust that as you continue to embody your awakening, you'll naturally attract people who resonate with your frequency. Trust that the loneliness is temporary, but the consciousness is permanent. Fourth, be selective. When you do meet new people, don't jump into friendship out of desperation. Be discerning. Wait for the ones who truly resonate. Wait for the ones who can meet you in depth. Quality over quantity. Always. And fifth, remember what Jung knew. Individuation requires periods of solitude. It requires separation from the collective. It requires standing alone while you're becoming who you truly are. This isn't failure. This is the path. This is how consciousness develops. Here's the final truth about why spiritually awake people don't have many friends. Because they can't. Not because they don't want friends. Not because they're incapable of connection. But because awakening changes you in ways that make most conventional friendships impossible. You can't pretend anymore. You can't play roles anymore. You can't maintain relationships based on mutual unconsciousness anymore. You need depth, authenticity, truth, consciousness. And most people aren't operating at that level. It's not a judgment, it's just a fact. So your circle shrinks. Not because something's wrong with you, but because something's finally right. You're becoming who you truly are. You're living from consciousness instead of unconsciousness. You're choosing authenticity over acceptance. You're choosing depth over breadth. You're choosing truth over comfort. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you miss the easy camaraderie of unconscious friendship. Yes, you wish it could be different, but you wouldn't go back because you've tasted something real. And once you've tasted the real thing, the counterfeit loses all its appeal. So if you're spiritually awake and you don't have many friends, know this. You're not broken. You're not doing it wrong. You're not too picky or too difficult or too intense. You're simply conscious in a largely unconscious world. And that makes friendship rare. But the friendships that are coming, the conscious connections with people who truly see you, they'll be worth the wait, worth the loneliness, worth every friendship you had to let go of to make space for them. Jung knew this, he lived this, and he would tell you, trust the path, trust the process, trust that your real tribe is finding you, and in the meantime, befriend yourself so deeply that you're never truly alone, because the relationship you're building with yourself, that's the foundation of everything. That's the friendship that will never leave you. That's the connection that makes all others possible. And that's worth more than 1,000 shallow friendships could ever be.